have found our way. It's a brand new day. We'll be making history. Are you with me? Won't you stay? We have come so far. This is who we are. And like the rising sun, we have just begun to play our part. This is the time we form the chorus. Lift your voice for those before us. We can rely on one another. Feel the pride, let's show our colors. We are heroes and dreamers. We are restless believers, stronger than ever. Never say never. Don't look back now. Don't look back now. Rise up, stand with each other. We are sisters and brothers, fighting our place and running the race. We'll take our chance and seize the moment. Hold on tight and don't let go of all your hopes and dreams that light the way. We control our fate. Destiny awaits. We are all the actors in the stories we create. Hope will be our guide. We'll no longer hide. When we roll like thunder, feel the wonder from inside. This is the time we form the chorus. Lift your voice for those before us. We can rely on one another. Feel the pride, let's show our colors. We are heroes and dreamers. We are restless believers, stronger than ever. Never say never. Don't look back now. Don't look back now. Rise up, stand with each other. We are sisters and brothers, fighting our place and running the race. We'll take our chance and seize the moment. Hold on tight and don't let go of all your hopes and dreams that light the way.
Howdy there, Pipe Pals. How about them Canadian truckers, eh? Okay, so here we are. Just thought I'd share my excitement and joy at the Canadian truckers who are trying to stand up for basic good old freedoms. So I'm pretty excited about what's going on in Canada. Now I know some of you are from Canada, maybe some of you are appalled at what's happening in Ottawa. And all I can say is I'm sorry about that. One of my favorite folk singers is the late great Stan Rogers. Now, I think I might have mentioned him once or twice in my 10 years on making my YouTube pipe channel here. But Stan Rogers, I think, was from Alberta. I think he was from Alberta originally. And he had a lot of good music. He was kind of a little bit like Gordon Lightfoot, but even better. Okay, if you know who Gordon Lightfoot is, you know. So anyway, I kind of think that Stan Rogers would be with the truckers. Now, some people may choose to disagree. Of course, I am not a real Canadian, more of a Canadian bacon, I guess you'd say. Don't you know? But I have to say that I really admire the people that are trying to stand up and voice their views, even though Justin Trudeau has kind of said that they're unacceptable views, they're inappropriate views. In a free society, I don't know if there is such a thing as inappropriate views or unacceptable views or unauthorized views. That almost sounds a little bit to me like, do I dare say it? Well, yeah, kind of sounds like we've got people that really, Canada, of course, America and Australia have always been the bastions of freedom and free speech and individual rights. And as a result of the COVID pandemic, unfortunately, a lot of those rights have been swept away, and totalitarianism has raised its ugly head. Okay, well, I'm kind of getting a little far afield here. I wanted to first of all start off by saying howdy there, pipe pals and gals, and I hope you're all well. I am working on. This is my. I think it's kind of funny because a few weeks ago, and even maybe years ago, I kind of disparaged this pipe. It's a Ben Wade Danish freehand, so to speak. And at my elbow here, I also have some coffee, courtesy of the United States Marine Corps. In the Marine Corps, and I guess maybe even in the other military branches, maybe we call it lifer juice. Lifer juice, black and strong, right? Lifer juice. But anyway, so I'm here on this wonderful February, 3rd of February, in the year of our Lord 2022. I'm playing out with a new little gadget here. I saw this thing about, several years ago, and I decided to finally, bite the bullet or whatever it is to get this Dolly automated Dolly camera zoom. It is what it is. I have a very, very cheap tripod, I have to say, and I think that's part of the reason why it's not maybe working as optimally as it could be. So anyway, here I am just gonna just kind of let the cameras roll. I'm doing a little two angle camera thing here, and I've got this little movie maker. They call it the director's version of this automated Dolly little gizmo that you put your camera on, whether it's your cell phone or a GoPro, and you put it on you can put it on a tripod. I probably could have put it on. I could have put it on the table. That might have been a little bit better. But then again, I don't know if it would have had the best angle. So I thought, well, I'll put it on a tripod because it can be mounted on a tripod. And Bob's your uncle, Sally's your aunt. So there you go. But anyway, so here I am, and in honor of Canada, I'm smoking some, in honor of the true North, i.e. Canada, I'm smoking some Northwoods there, don't you know? Yeah, yes, sir. So this is my little tribute to Canada, Canada's freedoms, the truckers, and all those Canadian. No, you Canadian pipe smokers, eh? Yeah, I have to say, I'm really excited about that. We're here down in the southern latitudes. And we're here in California. And we have the ersatz Justin Trudeau. His name is Gavin Newsom. But kind of the same, except he's, again, not quite maybe as Justin Trudeau's status is, but he'd like to be. He certainly would like to be. I'm sure that Gavin Newsom would love to be Prime Minister of Canada. If he could switch, he would. I know a few of you have taken umbrage with some of the things that I've said in recent years politically, and that's okay. It's still a free free country, free world, you know, we can still do these things. I'm wondering, I got to check my camera here real quick. See if this is still going. Yeah, it's still going. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Okay. I think it's still going. Okay. So, and I perfectly am well aware that there are people who might even think this video is an attempt to be a vaccine denier, and I'm not a vaccine denier. I know that I have put out my 4 criteria for determining whether or not you should get the vaccine or not. Now, my criteria is based upon Catholic teaching. Huh. Surprise! No, it doesn't come as a surprise to many of you. And the 4 criteria that I have is, first and foremost, and this is where my conscience is supreme. It's not just my conscience, my personal likes and dislikes, my personal preferences, my personal quote-unquote beliefs, but you have to have a well-formed conscience in the Catholic mindset. You have to understand that it isn't just your conscience, it is what's called a well-formed conscience. What does that mean? Well, it means that you have taken into consideration all of the church's teachings and the church's understanding on certain issues, so certain moral issues, one of those being abortion. And we are taught in moral theology, every single priest, to even include the Pope, that any complicity with the sin of abortion renders any possible good that could come of that. It would be like saying, well, I'm going to buy articles that were left over from Holocaust victims. And you might say that's a little bit far-fetched. Maybe some of you would even say it's not even fair to even use that analogy. But again, you're probably saying that's awfully repugnant. You know, how dare you say such a thing? Because we all know the suffering of those people in the concentration camps and all the death and mayhem that occurred there. Okay, and we know that. I mean, even to fly a Nazi flag is probably one of the most repugnant things you can do. And I know a few of you say, well, they were flying Nazi flags at those protests last weekend. And I go, well, folks, come on. Even you, Justin Trudeau, come on. You know that guy, there was one guy with a Nazi flag, one guy with this cracks me up as being an American. Somebody brings a Confederate flag to Canada. What were they thinking? Wrong history. You need to go back and do a history lesson, okay? Oh my gosh. You know, maybe that guy thought the South would rise again in the true North. And it's actually ludicrous. It's really ludicrous. It's kind of like bringing a squirt gun to a real military fight. It just doesn't work. It doesn't fit. It's like, I think you're out of place here. Or better yet, maybe bringing a pirate sword to trying to challenge an M60 machine gun, okay? There's something a little off here, okay? So anyway, those people were clearly, and let's say it all together, there were trolls. They did not represent at all those people in the Canadian truckers' protest. Not a single one of them did. And to pretend that they did is really laughable, okay? It's laughable. So please do us all a favor and just be aware that there are shills, there are trolls, there are infiltrators that are trying to bring discredit upon the group, and maybe someone even kind of said that Justin Trudeau was hoping it was going to turn violent. If he really said that to one of his underlings, then shame on him. Shame on him. So anyway, but I know some of you all that are Canadians and even Americans who maybe don't like my views on the vaccines. getting back to the vaccine, so my 4 criteria: 1, if it has anything to do with abortion, in my humble opinion, according to church teaching, you can't be a part of that. You can't use it. Okay, it'd be like using the bodies of Holocaust victims. Say they found some maybe you know for some strange, bizarre scientific thing, they actually found something in a corpse of a Holocaust victim that they could somehow render. And again, I know this is all science fiction here, but would you use it if it had come from somebody that was a Holocaust victim? I think you'd have some concerns about that. Okay, so we know, and not only is it abortion now, but it's abortion and fetal harvesting. This is the really grim and ugly, almost untouchable. I mean, untalkable. You don't talk about this. It's because it's so hideous. Not only do you kill the little babies in the womb for convenience, right? But now you're harvesting their little organs. Oh, it's barbaric. It's absolutely barbaric. So anything that is tainted with abortion, and a Catholic needs to, they have to consider that. They can't just dismiss that and say, well, it's okay. And I know a few of you say, well, the Pope says it's okay. Well, I don't know where he got his moral theology, but everybody knows Catholic moral theology has always taught, and it hasn't changed, that to be complicit, to procure an abortion, or to participate in somebody getting an abortion, or to participate in any level that supports or is something that is derived from an abortion, you cannot be a part of that. Okay? It's plain and simple. The second one is, and again, we're now finding out, and a lot of people get mad when I say this, we don't know the long-range side effects of the vaccines. Well, actually, we do. I mean, we're starting to see people reporting vaccine injuries. Okay? Vaccine injuries. People who have had neurological damage, myocardial symptoms or complications due to the vaccines. And a host of other things. Now, does that mean everybody's going to have some side effects? I don't know. Maybe you do and you just don't know it. But the bottom line is we don't know what the long-range side effects are going to be. We are starting to see, again, thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of people who are reporting vaccine injuries. So that's not a fantasy. That's not something that's made up. That's a real thing. And I've seen several people now who have gone on to try to talk about their vaccine injuries. The third criteria for me is personal. Personal is that I actually have had a vaccine injury. I should have done, and it's my fault, I should have done much more. I should have been more diligent when I got my shingles vaccines. I'm of that age where they were saying, hey, look, when you get to a certain age, you don't want to get shingles. It's one of the most miserable, awful, painful things you can get. It's very, very bad. And so if you can prevent it, okay. Well, unfortunately, like I said, I didn't do my due diligence and kind of really researching these things. I just, was at the grocery store, our little pharmacy and Rayleigh's, and oh, hey, we got our new shingles vaccine. Would you like to try it? I believe I will, So it's like they were kind of handing them out like candy there about 5 years ago. I don't think they're doing that as much. Well, maybe they are with the COVID vaccines. Maybe they are. So anyway, long story short, I've had a vaccine injury, and I'm very reluctant to have the vaccines, any vaccines. Vaccines are, from my best understanding, they're made out of compounds. It's not just putting the antigen in a saline solution and boop, there you go. They have to be held in some kind of a stasis, and a lot of the vaccines are compounds made out of very carcinogenic materials like aluminium salts and mercury and formaldehyde and other things that you don't really want to be putting in your body, really. Very carcinogenic. So, and then the fourth one is, guess what? It's the one that applies right now in Canada. Oh, Canada. Anyway, coercion. Coercion. Now, if people want to take the vaccines, they've talked to their doctor, they've even talked to their minister, probably, and they feel that they have a compelling reason to take it for their health. Okay, I'm not going to judge you. But the problem is that the reverse is not being applied to people that say thank you, but no thank you. One of the things that when I was growing up, when somebody offered you something, it was perfectly okay to say thank you, but no thank you. And the person would 9 times out of 10 respect that and understand that. Say, oh, okay, I guess the only time that really doesn't apply is with alcohol and the vaccine. What do you mean you don't want a drink? What do you mean you don't want a vaccine? Because I don't. So anyway, yes, I happen to say, go truckers, honk honk. I have to say Saturday, when everything was kind of, Saturday and Sunday, when they were basically at Parliament Hill, I got to be honest with you, I was filled with a lot of hope and pride, and I was, a lot of joy and happiness. It was like, hey, these people, the people are standing up and having their voices heard, because for the last year and a half, we've been told to sit down and shut up and take your jab. And that's not freedom, folks. And, they'll say, but you deny or you minimize the COVID, and it's killed thousands of people. Well, I know that. I'm not denying that at all. But guess what? Cars kill thousands of people every year. In fact, statistically, I would probably say that cars still kill more people than COVID has in a year, on a yearly basis. Are we going to get rid of cars? Are we going to put masks on cars? Are we going to make sure that cars stay 60 feet? Got to have 600 feet distance, don't you know? Are you going to tell, make sure that the cars have vaccinations or something? I don't know, but, cars, unfortunately, kill more people than COVID has, I think. So do we ban airplanes? Airplanes, they kill a lot of people when they go down, sad to say, So anyway, I think the mandates, and it looks like the mandates, I think there was they were going to tax unvaccinated people in Quebec. I think they dropped that. I think Saskatchewan has dropped all mandates. I'm not sure if it was Alberta or Ontario. I'm still learning my provinces of Canada, which it's kind of nice. I've gotten a nice little overview on Canada and the territories and everything, and the provinces. But one of them, I think, is also dropping the Vax passport. Yeah. So the tax on the unvaccinated, that's been dropped, I think, in Quebec. And again, Saskatchewan has dropped all mandates. No masks, no vaxes, no nothing. I think they dropped them all. The ones that was going to have the vaccine passport, and that might have been Ontario. I think they dropped that one, but or maybe it was I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head right now. And of course, Erin O'Toole is gone, the leader of the Conservative Party, and right now, I guess Candice Bergen, who I think is the daughter of the actress Candice Bergen. I'm almost 90% sure that is the case. She looks an awful lot like the original Candice Bergen. I wouldn't be surprised if that's her daughter. I think it's probably her daughter. If it's not, it has the same name and bears a striking resemblance. I mean, kind of go do the math, I think, on that one. So, and I like the attitude of many of the Canadians. I've been watching a lot of Canadian TV and a lot of YouTube channels, and I just really like the caliber of the people. The ones that I'm watching are just really, 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 really good people, I think. Now, yes, I know I'm just what do you call it, an interloper. I'm just somebody as an eavesdropper. I'm not a real Canadian. I'm going to play one on YouTube. Don't you know? But I think it's a positive thing, and I think the people that are afraid, that's what they need to look at. They need to look at why they're so afraid, okay? People get COVID and they do just fine. In fact, the Omicron is probably, I guess it's the most virulent, but it's the least lethal, so or serious. So if you get it, you're probably going to get a case of the sore throat and the sniffles and maybe a cough, and in about 5 to 6 days you'll get over it, and Bob's your uncle, Sally's your aunt, you know. But again, it's people die of the common flu, common cold and flu, you know, every year. Thousands of people. I think the last year before COVID, we had like 80,000 people died of the flu. I mean, it's a tragic thing. It's a sad thing, but it's inevitable that we're all going to die, you know. And that's why, you know, and I got to say this, I just love, now again, I don't know if the Canadian national anthem, they changed the words, but the ones I was playing originally and the ones that I've been heard talk about God. Man, how in the world can you do that and get away with it this day and age? And then the last verse, at least the version that I played, was all about basically, you know, God is, the whole theme of that anthem, at least for me, is that God has given Canadians this beautiful, beautiful land, you know, with the mountains and the rivers and the trees and the mooses and the bears and, you know, you name it, you know, and it's a gift, but you have to it's a responsible gift that has to be held in trust. And eventually there's going to be a time when we're going to have to make a rendering, an account back to God and say, you know, you gave us this gift of this wonderful land we call Canada, and this is what we've done with it, and we give it back to you now. You know, it's sort of like this kind of real recycling, you know, spiritual, you know, true recycling, because everything comes from God and returns to God, okay? And I just think that I was amazed when I heard those words of the Canadian national anthem. Now, I'm sure somewhere they've changed it and they have more of a Justin Trudeau PC one version, you know. I wouldn't be surprised, so I'll have to find that out. But the two versions that I had were they clearly mentioned God, and the last fourth, I think it's the fourth verse, it's all about basically rendering back to God in gratitude for what he's given to the people of Canada, you know. So anyway, I actually ordered a Canadian flag today, and if the truckers are still out there in the next few days, when I get my Canadian flag, I might just fly it in honor of Canada and honor those truckers. So I have no problems doing that. So anyway, let's see. I'm here again smoking some Northwoods in honor of the True North. That's Canada. And got some coffee. Again, my Lifer juice. Love my Lifer juice. So I'm going to try out this new video recording with two camera angles. And I've already seen that it's got some work to do. It's got some little bugs in the system, but over and all, it's not doing too bad. I'm kind of happy with it. I hope it's working. I just turned the camera on and let it go, so it's on this little dolly, and it just rides back and forth and kind of gives you a different perspective. So there you go. One of the things I was going to talk about, or two things I wanted to talk about in doing my pipetificating, as I like to call it. See, one of them is, hold on a second. Let's see, I was wondering if I have enough ideas that I was going to develop on this other idea. I was going to talk about relationships and friendships. And I guess, for the most part, relationships and friendships are kind of an interesting phenomenon. There are people in our lives, and I don't know, maybe some people have more friends than others on your Facebook friends. That's what it's all about, your Facebook friends or your subscribers on your YouTube channel. Those are your real friends. But it is, I'm sad to say, a falling out with someone who I actually did consider a friend. Not necessarily an intimate friend, but somebody that I felt we had a kind of a relationship with. And I kind of made a mistake in a meeting, kind of did the wrong thing. I did something that clearly was made them very upset. And although we didn't actually have words that I considered to be, friendship breaking, that kind of, when you have a really bad fight with somebody. But it was basically just a difference of opinion. When I look back on it, I'm trying to be objective. What was my part in all this stuff? And, what could I have done different? What should I have done different? All these things, you think about when you say, okay. Because when you have a falling out with somebody and you kind of an end of a relationship, you kind of say, well, what did I do wrong? Let me be, again, it's hard to do that. And I'm not really good at it because I'm not that mature. But I'm getting better to say, okay, where did I go wrong? What was my part in this? And can I do ownership? I've been watching not only Jordan Peterson videos for the last several years, but Jocko Willink, as you know. Did a little homage to Jocko, I think my last video. But he talks about extreme ownership. And basically, that's the way you grow. Not only as a leader, but as a person. You try to say, okay, if I mess up, I'm going to own it, and I'm going to say, yep, that was me. Or, if you truly feel, minus your as much of your ego, subtract as much of your ego as you can, and be objective. And it's hard, and say, but say, yeah, okay, here's where I made a mistake, and here's where I don't know if I really made a mistake or not. So, again, I've had relationships that come and go. We all do. Some of them are work related. Somebody moves away. You had that in the military a lot. You would go to a new duty station, and although you missed your other friends and acquaintances from your last duty station, and you missed, in the military, you have very intimate, quick bonds. You will bond very quickly and intimately with people, especially if you're on an deployment, you're in a combat situation, because you have to trust those people like you've trusted no one else in your life. Maybe with the exception of your mother and dad. And if you had a poor mother and dad, then that bets off on that one. But again, military relationships, for the most part, can be really quick and fast, and really intimate bonds. And I guess it just has to be that way. And when those relationships, do come to an end, somebody we call PCS, permanent exchange of station, they go to another duty station, or you go to another duty station, and well, that relationship, that dynamic, because it's not just it's the relationships you form, especially when you're in the military, they're really integral to the unit integrity. It's like a brick. So every relationship that you kind of have, or every individual is a brick, but it has a special, unique place in that brick wall, right? And so, when that goes away, those bonds, they do kind of fall apart, and that's sad to say that kind of, for the most part, that's, you might have, you might from time to time still maybe have a phone call or a text or something from, some of your people in your past, but for the most part, our lives have gone in a different direction, and your life has gone in a different direction, and it's sad, but it's understandable. But the relationships that I guess I'm kind of referring to is when they just disintegrate. Now sometimes, again, you do someone bad, you cheat on them, you lie to them, You aren't there for them. Yeah, okay. You can understand, and let's say maybe you have a bad, yeah, okay, maybe through your own human weakness you do one of those things. Either you betray them, lie to them, you aren't there for them. Chances are, if you're sorry and you can truly prove your contrition and you really mean it, you probably will save the relationship can be saved. But there are just some relationships that I guess I don't know, they just can't be saved. And I had one of those experiences. It's very rare. I'm happy to say it's kind of rare that those happened. But it takes me by surprise, and I know I'm trying to say, well, a lot of times I think a lot of us are like this. Well, you'll kind of just say, well, it's all my fault, because then you feel like you got some control over it. But maybe it's not your fault. Maybe it's the other person's fault. I'm kind of a person who does tend to kind of take the blame, and most of the time because I am to blame. Whether it's I did something, I wouldn't say maliciously, but maybe I was just being a little bit selfish, or I was being neglectful. But there's a third category for me, and just being plain stupid. Sometimes I can do some stupid things unintentionally, not motivated by, say, passions or anger, but I just, it's like you walk by somebody's house and you walk by their $400 vase that their Aunt Myrtle gave them, for their wedding anniversary 50 years ago, and your sweater, unbeknownst to you, catches on a little, hook or handle, and that thing comes flying off the shelf, and it goes onto the floor, and it goes into a million pieces. Again, it's an accident. You didn't intend that. You weren't trying to be malicious, but those things happen. And so, okay, you did something stupid. You didn't do it intentionally, but the result is something got broken. And even if you take ownership for it, they might say, well, look, I just want you to leave. Please, just leave. And as you're going out the door, you knock over the grandfather clock, you scratch their 500-year-old table, and you say, have a nice day. Anyway, so, but anyway, so friendships are a very interesting kind of a thing. And it kind of makes you appreciate the ones that you have, because you realize how valuable they really are and how rare they really are. So, Yep, that's good. Good old Northwoods. So the last thing I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and I'll end with this topic, I've been looking at a lot of documentaries, and I think we even talked about one of the characters last time. What was her name? Here I am talking about influential people, and I forgot her name. Elizabeth Holmes, not to be confused with Sherlock Holmes. But it came up. We were talking. I guess it's been kind of people have been talking a lot about. Oh, and this other lady, this preacher lady. I don't know if you ever heard of. I never heard of this lady, but she was quite fascinating. Kind of like a Tammy Faye Baker, but maybe in a little bit smaller, circle of influence. But she was in Kentucky, I think. Kentucky or Tennessee, I can't remember. But anyway, she started off with a dieting thing, Christian dieting program, and then about 10 years into that, after making a lot of money on that, she decided to start her own church. What do you think about that, eh? So anyway, she kind of went off the deep end, and she saw herself as a prophetess, I guess. She certainly made a profit on her weight loss books and tapes and stuff, videos. But they were just talking about, influencers and how, when you stop and think about it, Elon Musk is an influencer. Joe Rogan, he's an influencer. And then you have your own people in your own bailiwick that you're interested in, whether it's crocheting or Second Amendment rights, I don't know. Everybody's got their little niche that they're interested in, their hobbies, whatever. And so especially on YouTube and I guess Instagram and, the internet is replete with all these influencers. And what I guess that gets into the dark side is that, well, these influencers, in a lot of ways, it's kind of funny. I look at a lot of my Apple guys and gals that, talk about their latest new Apple acquisitions and, oh gosh, you got to try this, new product or this new, one of the things that Apple has been trying to develop, and I guess it actually is coming out, which I kind of thought they were going to scrap it because they couldn't do it. But I guess they're going to go ahead and do it, and it looks like it's going to work, which is great, called Universal Control, where you can take just one keyboard and one mouse, and it goes across all your Apple devices, whether it's an iMac, a MacBook Pro, or an iPad, just one mouse to rule them all, which is it's a cool concept. It's a cool feature. Talk about your Apple ecosystem. Now it's become more accessible with just one little piece of device, and instead of having a separate keyboard and separate trackpad or mouse for each device, now you can just have the one and Bob's your uncle. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So anyway, but a lot of these young guys and gals, and some older ones like me, it's interesting because I think a lot of these companies are just they're probably just just smiling all the way to the bank, because you can pay for a slick ad, but it's people like these YouTube influencers that are probably getting them the most revenue, because you and I, we like our relationships, our connections, and if my friend has bought this product, or somebody I consider, like-minded, and somebody I feel like I have an affiliation with or an affinity for, and they bought this product, well, by golly, I think I'm going to go buy that product too, or I'm going to use this device. I'll use this device as opposed to that device. And so these people, these companies are getting tons and tons and tons of free advertising. Because here's the thing, a lot of us, we like to appear that we know what we're talking about. We have something of value to share with people. I think, I feel to some extent that I hope that I have something of value to share to people, on my other YouTube channel. But again, the dark side of the influencers, the internet influencers, and it isn't just the internet influencers. This goes all the way back before the internet, and but we're talking people like the dark side of where I'm going with this is like people like Jim Jones. Maybe you can even go back to the French Revolution. Robespierre. Just remember, Robespierre lost his head too, folks. Okay, just remember that. But again, when people influence other people to take up a cause, to take up an ideology, to take up a product line, there's something kind of seductive about that, especially if they really are sincere. It helps if you're good looking, like me, of course, to be an influencer. But the problem is that when you talk about the dark side of, the influencing thing, and you're really taking advantage of people and you're manipulating people. And that's where I think that's where it gets into the dark, murky waters. And So to be an influencer, a YouTube influencer or an internet influencer, oh boy, it's kind of a scary thing, you know, because you're now obviously encouraging people to maybe do things that maybe in the long run may not be good for them. And you have a responsibility, I think, to not manipulate people, especially if you do have a following. There's a lot of internet people out there that I would say are probably, I want to believe that they're good people and they aren't really trying to manipulate people per se. A lot of them just want to share their lives, and sometimes they do little product things that are fun. And as long as you feel like, okay, as long as you're even aware that, okay, just because so-and-so does it doesn't mean I have to do it. But I guess the thing that really got my attention was that this little gal, the going back to the little, I think her name was Gwen Shamblin, back in Kentucky or Tennessee, Remnant Church. That's right. They called she called her church Remnant Church. But she really took advantage of people. Now, I want to believe that in some ways she wasn't really trying to hurt people per se. She wasn't trying to really, well, a lot of people who went through that church and left it, and you know, the gal died in a plane crash about 6 months ago. God rest her soul. She and her new boyfriend, basically, and some other ministers of that church, they all went down in an airplane crash. Sad. It was very sad. But the thing was that a lot of people felt like they were being manipulated and controlled unnecessarily, you know. And that's the problem, I think, when you get into a position that you become like the guru, you know. You become like, you know, the big cheese, you know. You're the know-it-all. You're the prophet, you know. So another interesting video, which is kind of on the other side of that, a guy who kind of started it was kind of like a new age ministry, kind of a I even forgot the guy's name in the ministry, but it wasn't, I don't think it was Christian, it was just new age. But essentially, I guess the guy kind of came to a realization that he was kind of going a bit down to a dark path, you know, starting to manipulate and control people. And before it got really bad and out of hand, he kind of said, you know, he kind of had a little bit of a moment of clarity, and he said, you know what, I really don't want to be a guru. I don't want to be an influencer. I don't want people following me. I really don't. And now some people, what was happening was some people started having, you know, I guess he was into this mindfulness, emptiness kind of a thing. Maybe it was kind of Tibetan Buddhism or something. I don't know. Again, it was kind of a hodgepodge of Eastern mysticism and New Age stuff. And so they started kind of putting out a list of things that you could and could not do in the community, you know, to be a part of this community. And it was kind of like a commune thing. And well, you know, you do have to have order. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against order at all. But it was starting to become very totalitarian, you know. I'm looking at you, Justin Trudeau. And the guy, like I said, he kind of, I don't know what happened. I think there were a few members that kind of started challenging him and challenging this religion. You know, why are we having to do these things now? And why is this all mandatory? And why are you forcing us to do these things? And, you know, and the guy kind of maybe, I mean, I say he came to his senses. Now, some people might say, well, he basically got disillusioned with his own his own celebrity maybe, and that's okay too. Because when you start influencing to the point where now you're kind of taking on responsibility for other people's lives, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. And when you try to control other people, good luck. It's like herding cats. Doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So, I know that there are people in my neck of the woods that I live and play in, if you will, in internet YouTube land that I watch on a regular basis. And I would say some of them are influential. I don't know if they're influencers per se. That might be a stretch, because I don't think they're starting their own, fan club or their own church or their own, ministry type thing. But they certainly do share their opinions, and they have every right to do that. And sometimes their opinions are quite valid. But I just think that, sometimes, and the other thing too is that people will put other people on a pedestal to say, hey, we want you to be our kind of like our leader and stuff. And you got to be very careful that if you see that happening, that you try to exercise a little bit of humility and now if you're obviously if you're somebody who's running a company or or maybe you're running a church, you have a responsibility, of course, to be authentic and try to help people, but not rule over them. You must do as I say. It never works. I mean, it might work for a while, but I was in a thing called the shepherding program many decades ago, and they kind of fashioned themselves as kind of like the true church. Catholicism was all wrong. Most Protestant denominations were all wrong. They were non-denominational, and in fact, I guess there's still a few of them still kicking to this day. They're still around. They're still out there doing their thing. But anyway, it got really oppressive, and it was not a good thing. I don't think. I think that in the long run, it hurt a lot more people than it helped people, and I think it hurt people because a few individuals saw themselves as somehow ordained by God to somehow rule over their brothers and sisters when they really they had no clue what was going on. They were able to put on a good act, but for the most part, they were just like everybody else, and they had their own problems. They just hit them a little bit better than the other people, and I just felt like it was just not a very healthy environment. And so we finally, myself and my best buddy, we kind of left that church, and then I became Catholic, and he went to another. I think he's now a full gospel, Foursquare, Pentecostal kind of guy now. So, but anyway, I just thought I was kind of fascinated by this whole thing about influencers, and I know that in every sphere of interest, there probably are influencers out there, and maybe we're aware of it, and maybe we're not. And it's kind of nice to be able to, even though you may like a certain person on YouTube, but if they're hawking goods and they're trying to sell you something, you're free to say, well, that's interesting, but no, thank you, And that brings me kind of like back full circle where I started, with this whole thing about the Canadian truckers. They're not trying to overthrow their government. There's not. I know Justin Trudeau has tried to equate it to the January 6th fiasco, completely misrepresented here in America, which was completely wrong. There was no call for an insurrection whatsoever. I saw the videos. Donald Trump said, let's have a peaceful march. After all, here in America, we recognize that the Capitol is the people's house, So they had every right to, go in there if they wanted to. And so, again, I know there were a few people that were hurt and killed, sadly. Even one of the protesters was shot and killed. Was her name Ashley Babbitt? I think that's what her name was. But anyway, But again, to force people and not give them the freedom of choice, I think that's the heart of the issue. And so, if one person, for example, unvaccinated people are probably the minority now. I think Canada's 90% vaccinated. America's probably 80%, if not close to 90. So the unvaccinated aren't super spreaders. In fact, I think most of the unvaccinated, like myself, have already had the COVID, and we have natural immunity, which the science is proving over and over again that we have greater immunity than people that have the jabs. Sorry, that's just science. See, that's the problem. People don't want to listen to the real science. They want to listen to the propaganda, the agenda. And one of the organizers of the truckers said, well, how come you didn't invite was it CBC and Toronto News and all those places? He goes, because they're not journalists, they're activists. And I said, buddy, you got it in one. Our mainstream media, they're not journalists, they're activists. They're carrying the water for this one opinion, the only one that is tolerated, one opinion to rule them all. That should sound familiar. Okay? And again, I just think that what they're doing is great. I salute those truckers, those Canadian truckers, and I want to see them be successful. And I think they already are in many ways. And I just would like to see if Justin Trudeau is a true person who believes in diversity, that he humbles himself. I don't know if I don't know if the Ken doll is able to humble himself. I just don't think that's possible. I think his ego is so inflated that he just can't see. He just can't see his shoes because his head's so big, So anyway, I hope that maybe he'll have a moment of pause, and realize, what? We're probably more in an endemic now than a pandemic. And yeah, COVID's going to be kind of here with us in some form or another, but it's not going to be raging and killing people like it did the first year and a half, maybe. Let's pray God that that's true. It seems to be the case. It seems to be that's what's happening on a biological and scientific level. So that's good news, And instead of disparaging that and poo-pooing it and saying, well, that's not real. Those aren't real facts. The real only valued acceptable opinion is our opinion. Well, in a free country, and this is where I think that the Canadians have kind of shown the rest of the world is no, other opinions are also valid, and they're not inappropriate. They're not unauthorized. Okay. Everybody, again, if you can back it up with science, you have a place at the table. And I like one of the things I like about the Canadians is they seem to be a little more civil. In our world, our political leaders are just filled with contemptuousness and anger and hatred towards the other ones. So there's a little bit more civility, I have to say, and I salute and I take my hat off to the Canadian people, because they do seem like they've retained a little bit more civility and the ability to at least try to dialogue. But it seems like under Justin Trudeau and some of the Liberals that is quickly becoming, up until recently, it was becoming kind of an extinct virtue, if you will. So I'm really hoping that things will turn around. We can all agree to disagree. And, if you've watched my channel, that's kind of where I fall, is like, I may not agree with you, you may not agree with me, but let's have the civility and the decency and the respect to say, okay, I'm sorry, I disagree with you, and here's why. But when you go off and you start cursing and yelling and screaming and F you and F that, and you've lost. You've lost. For example, I'll close with this. I was watching the convoy Saturday and Sunday. All you heard was in my room, honk, 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 honk. I'm sure people after Mass were wondering what's going on up in Father's room up there. I keep hearing all these truck horns. Yeah, well, it was this wonderful symphony of truck horns. I loved it. But this one young guy, I think he was in British Columbia. He was, because there were a lot of other celebrations that were going on concurrently with what was happening in Ottawa. And I think this guy was in BC or Vancouver. Is Vancouver part of BC? Forgive me, I'm ignorant on a lot of my Canadian geography. Oh, my Canadian geology. Aren't the Rocky Mountains in Canada? I think they are. Eh? Okay. I think they originated. I think they invented the Rocky Mountains, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But anyway, this guy had this really positive street video where he's, just filming all these happy people, and everybody was just kind of, just really positive and just really happy and celebrating. And he had a great first video. But the second video, some Canadian police officers came. He was in a van, kind of like a motorhome kind of a van set up. And they were just asking him, hey, letting him know about the city ordinance. And the police were very respectful. I have to say that they weren't being jerks. They were just saying, hey, according to the ordinances, you can't be living in here after 9 p.m. You can't be living on your van on the streets. It's not permitted. Okay. Well, instead of saying, okay, thank you, officer, whatever, the guy starts cussing him out, F you and F this, where the day before he had this really positive, really good video. He was like, you watched it, you said, man, I really enjoyed that. It made me feel like I was kind of there and part of it. But then he goes postal. He becomes a male Karen, he just becomes a jerk. And I told him, I said, I'm sorry. I watched your first video and I really, truly enjoyed it. But this video, what a turnoff. You should be ashamed of yourself. You had no call to be that way, because I guess he's maybe very he's so anti-government that, it's like, okay. So, but I don't think that he represents most of the people that are there. They just want to have their voices heard, which they have every right to, and, to be considered, not to be dismissed, So I'm hoping, I really am hoping, and I'll end with this, that they really can have a turnaround. Let's make freedom infectious again. We've been infected by COVID. Let's be infected with freedom. Okay? All right. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Light up your world. Light up your pipe. Hey?
Look, son! It's one of nature's most beautiful sights! The convoy!
They're coming in through the back door!
People want change. They feel that we are their last hope because nobody else is listening. We're listening, and we are here.
How's it been?
Hey, buddy, it's been good, man. Peaceful. People are in a great mood.
That's what I'm talking about.
Always supportive of people exercising their democratic right to peacefully protest.
Much
Stay
appreciated.
safe.
Thank
Stay safe out there.
you. Thank you.
We're all brothers in this together, and we're here for one cause, and that's to fight for the freedoms of Canadians and for Canada itself. We need our rights back.
We're here for freedom, for what's right for the people, not what's right for the government.
This is about freedom.
That's what we're standing for, is freedom.
I just left the island I live on and I'm on my way to Vancouver for a day, just to visit some friends. I'm exercising one of the fundamental rights as a Canadian citizen, to travel freely within my country. This is just one of many rights enshrined in our Constitution, one that was being tested several months ago when several provinces began dabbling in a very dangerous experiment of attempting to limit this right, among others, all under the guise of public safety. Even here in BC, they tried to block off travel in some areas for a little while. Although it was never legally enforceable, it amounted to nothing more than a massive media and government-fueled intimidation campaign to keep people at home. The fact it was even being considered and attempted in the first place is simply unthinkable. And the fact that so many people actually supported and outright asked the government to do this, well, that's just terrifying. What we've seen over the last 2 years is a lot of otherwise rational, logical citizens who used to rally against government overreach and big corporations suddenly all become advocates for big government and corporations. And they even demand removal of rights and freedoms because they want to feel safe. They demanded that governments start controlling and limit their fellow citizens. Fear is the most powerful form of coercion on earth. Fear has taken over their thought process. Fear has overridden their logic, their context, and indeed their entire lives. Governments have used fear to control populations all throughout history. This is nothing new, but apparently many folks have never read history books. And that is more dangerous than any virus on the planet. These type of people are a problem. They give government social license to stomp all over our freedoms. They allow this nightmare to continue. And the irony of it all is that their fear is largely unfounded in every way. I mean, we could talk all day about data and statistics, but the underlying fact is that driving a semi-truck across Canada is far, 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 far more likely to land a person in hospital than Omicron sniffles are. Context really does matter. Of course, exceptions do exist, and there is some risk with what's going on in the world the last couple years, but exceptions to a rule don't prove a rule wrong. Nor do they justify driving the population into depression and bankruptcy due to government overreach. Not to mention the skyrocketing number of people taking their own lives and the overdose epidemic. Our Constitution includes the Bill of Rights and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. One of the non-arguments that statists like to use to justify the violation of our charter is Section 1, which states, "The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society." These people and the federal Liberal government are trying to claim the virus is a justified reason. But of course, this is nothing of the sort, and their overreach is not legally justified. Don't believe me? How about we listen to a man who actually wrote the charter? His name is Brian Peckford. He is the last surviving signatory of the charter, and he is taking the federal government to court because they are overstepping their authority and abusing the charter. He spoke to a crowd in Vancouver. Have a listen.
Why in 1981 we brought in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which wasn't passed by the Prime Minister, it was passed by 9 provinces and the Prime Minister. It's a national document that applies to everyone here today and everyone all over Canada. So understand, except for the creation of the country in 1867, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is by far the most important document in the history of our country. Section 2 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, what does it say? It says you have freedom of expression, you have freedom of conscience, you have freedom of religion, you have freedom of expression, and you have freedom of the press. What else does it say? It says you have freedom to associate. You have freedom to assemble. And in Section 6 it says, you have the right to travel anywhere in this nation, anytime. It also says in Section 6, you have the right to pursue a livelihood anywhere in this country. And then number 7 says, Section 7 says, you have the right, listen to this one, to life, liberty, and you also have the right to your security of the person. Nobody is allowed to touch you unless you agree. And then Section 15 says, to top it all off, we topped it off by saying every person in Canada is equal before the law. You're just as equal as Justin Trudeau. You're just as equal as John Horgan. You're just as equal as Adrian Dix. And by damn, you're really just as equal as Bonnie Henry. And then we've got people out there who are trying to say to me and to others that somehow Section 1 of the Constitution, somehow that Section 1 forgives the government. And that they can go ahead and override those other 4 sections I just mentioned. I got news for them. There are 4 tests that had to be met. Well, first of all, that Section 1 doesn't even apply to our circumstance. Because when we wrote that section, the whole idea was this, that the only way you could override these sacrosanct rights and freedoms of individuals, which, if there was a dire situation in the country like war or insurrection, a virus from which 99% recover, is no war and no insurrection. And then if you tried to, even if you tried to make it, if you tried to squeeze it to apply, if you tried to bend it to make it try to apply to this circumstance, what did you have to do? You had to do 4 things. Number 1, justify? No, that wasn't heavy enough. Demonstrably justify what you're doing. Okay? Okay, is that all? No. You have to demonstrably justify that by law. That meant a new law, not the existing laws that they're using. New circumstance means new law. Where's the new law? They never went to the Parliament. They never went to the provincial assemblies to get a new law. They tried to use the existing law. They skirted around the Charter of Rights and Freedoms by law. Number 3, using reasonable limits. And number 4, you had to do all of those other 3, but remember, it had to be done in a way that was consistent with a free and democratic society. What they're doing is not consistent with any free or democratic society. It's more consistent with a totalitarian society. So don't be fooled by those who try to tell you that somehow you can skirt around the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I was there, I helped write the damn thing, and they're wrong, and we're right.
Now here's the thing. I'm tired of people claiming the majority this, the majority that, or most people support this, or most people support that. It doesn't matter if most of the population thinks something is justified. That is never a reason to override our basic rights. I'm also tired of big government apologists who think it's okay for the majority to impose its will on a minority. Whether or not we're a minority is actually irrelevant. If I owned this pink pickup truck and 99% of the population doesn't like it, should they be allowed to take it away from me? Of course not. When somebody says majority rules, that is actually code for tyranny of the majority, also known as mob mentality. And that is never, ever acceptable in a free society. If the mob tried to take away my property like that, I would be fully justified to resist and practice civil disobedience. That's all there is to it. Individual liberty is paramount to a free society. Whenever someone says, "do this for the greater good," it raises the hairs on the back of my neck. That term, in modern times, is most often used as a preface to the removal of individualism, liberties, and freedoms. Pick any subject, it happens all the time. It's a very dangerous mentality. I know I'm not alone in saying this, but I would much rather live in a more dangerous society over being in a supposedly safe police state. All of life is a risk, and as far as daily risks go, the current situation is actually quite a small risk. We must always have the right to choose. We must always have the right to consider our own personal risk assessments and act accordingly. Those that are living in unfounded fear are free to wear whatever they like, inject whatever they want in their own bodies, and act accordingly. but they do not get to dictate my choices, not even if there was a real emergency. Our Constitution, much like constitutions in many other countries around the world, is designed to protect our individual liberties and our individual freedoms. The minute we surrender those rights and freedoms in exchange for a collective state of mind, we have lost our freedom. There is no such thing as a greater good without freedom. If we allow governments to sidestep constitutions now, how long before they start using any other emergency, whether real or imagined, to withhold our rights? How long until they use climate change as a reason to limit our travel and confine us to cities, or to dictate how we must live? Are you ready to carry around a carbon passport? You know, for the greater good, of course. So, to the few people out there who are actually against these truckers and patriots, I say to you, we are not a mob mentality trying to impose anything on you. We are fighting to prevent you from imposing on us. Your compliance and continued obedience is the problem, not the other way around. For those who are complaining about the noise in the streets and empty shelves in Ottawa because trucks can't deliver you supplies at the moment, well, I'm sorry, but the trucks are too busy delivering freedom right now, and that is much, much more important. Keep on trucking in the free world, everyone.